"You are fired, Mr. Bennett. 17 minutes late is still late." Claire Sterling said it in the middle of the Sterling Crest Hotel lobby, where the marble floors shone like ice, and every manager in a dark suit turned to watch a good man lose his job before his coat had even stopped dripping rain. Noah Bennett stood just inside the revolving doors, breath uneven from rushing across 3 blocks, work shirt damp at the collar, brown boots marked with mud from the employee parking ramp. In his right hand, almost hidden against his palm, was a small yellow hair clip shaped like a butterfly. He had meant to give it to security. He had meant to explain. But the lobby had already decided what kind of man he was before he opened his mouth. Claire Sterling, 34 years old, Chief Executive Officer of Sterling Crest Hotels, stood beside a long table of inspection folders and silver coffee urns, her blonde hair pinned neatly, her cream blazer flawless, her expression calm enough to wound. Around her, department heads stood in a half-circle for the morning operational review. Behind them, guests moved quietly past tall flower arrangements, luggage wheels whispered over polished stone, and the smell of fresh coffee mixed with the sharp, clean scent of rain brought in from Michigan Avenue. Martin Cole, the operations director, stepped forward with a tablet pressed to his chest and the pleased sorrow of a man who had been waiting for this moment. "Mr. Bennett has been warned before," Martin said. "Maintenance cannot function on excuses, especially on an inspection day." Noah looked at him, then at Claire. "I had a reason." Claire did not soften. "Everyone has a reason." Noah swallowed, water sliding from his sleeve to the floor in a small dark line. "This one matters." Martin gave a quiet sigh, just loud enough for the managers to hear. "That is what unreliable people always say." A few eyes dropped. One young supervisor looked toward Noah with pity, but pity is not courage, and the room stayed silent. Noah thought of his daughter, Mia, already at school with the lunch he packed before sunrise. He thought of the note his late wife had taped inside his old toolbox. "Be gentle when the world is not." So he did not raise his voice. He did not defend himself with anger. He simply stood there with the yellow hair clip in his hand and the dignity of a father who had learned that truth does not become smaller just because powerful people refuse to hear it. Claire lifted her chin. "Turn in your badge by the end of the day." Noah nodded once. "Yes, ma'am." He reached for the badge clipped to his belt. The lobby seemed to exhale, as if the uncomfortable part was over. Then the elevator doors opened behind Claire, and a little girl in a yellow raincoat ran out so fast her shoes squeaked against the marble. Her face was pale, her eyes red from crying, and one side of her hair hung loose where the butterfly clip was missing. "Mom," she cried, rushing past every manager and straight toward Noah. Claire froze. "Ava." The child grabbed Noah's wet sleeve with both hands and held on like he was the only safe thing in the whole shining hotel. "Stop," Ava said, her voice trembling through the silent lobby. "Do not fire him. He saved me." Hours before, that little girl ran across the Sterling Crest lobby and held on to Noah Bennett like the whole world depended on his sleeve. He had been standing barefoot in a small apartment kitchen at 5:20 in the morning, trying to make pancakes shaped like stars. The first one burned at the edges. The second one looked more like a cloud. The third made his 8-year-old daughter, Mia, laugh so hard she nearly spilled orange juice across her math homework. "Daddy, that is not a star," she said, pushing her glasses up her nose. "That is a potato with ambition." Noah smiled and flipped another pancake. "Then we respect the ambitious potato." Outside, Chicago was still gray and wet, rain tapping softly against the kitchen window, streetlights glowing on the parked cars below. The apartment was modest, 2 bedrooms, old cabinets, a heater that clicked before it warmed, and a wall covered with Mia's drawings, school awards, and one framed photograph of her mother, Emily, smiling beside Lake Michigan before illness thinned her face but never touched her kindness. Noah looked at that photograph every morning, not because he could not move forward, but because love, when it is real, becomes part of how a person stands. Beside the coffee maker, taped to the inside lid of his metal lunchbox, was the note Emily had written years ago in blue ink. "Be gentle when the world is not." He read it while packing Mia's sandwich, apple slices, and a small chocolate cookie he pretended was a secret. "Inspection day?" Mia asked. Noah nodded. "Big one. Is Miss Sterling going to be there?" "Probably." Mia made a face. "She sounds scary." Noah zipped the lunchbox and brushed a crumb from her cheek. People who carry a lot sometimes forget how heavy they look to everyone else. He braided her hair slowly, the way Emily had taught him from a hospital bed, then drove her to school in his old gray Ford. He was not late. He was never late for Mia. At 7:32, he watched her walk through the school doors, turn back, and wave twice, the second wave just for him. By 7:48, he was pulling into the employee parking entrance beneath Sterling Crest, already calculating that he had 12 minutes to clock in, change into his maintenance jacket, and check the east ballroom lighting before the inspection team arrived. Then he saw it near the stairwell door, a small yellow butterfly hair clip lying in a shallow puddle, bright against the concrete like a warning. He picked it up, frowning. A child's voice echoed faintly from the lower level, not loud, not dramatic, just small enough to be missed by anyone in a hurry. Noah stopped moving. Another man might have looked at his watch first. Noah looked toward the sound. "Hello," he called gently. The parking garage answered with dripping water, distant tires, and the cold buzz of fluorescent lights. Then came a little sob from behind a concrete column. Noah stepped closer, slowly, keeping both hands visible. A girl in a yellow raincoat sat curled near the wall, one side of her hair loose, her knees pulled to her chest, her eyes wide with fear. She could not have been more than 7. "Hey there," Noah said softly, lowering himself several feet away so he would not frighten her. "My name is Noah. I work here. I found your butterfly." The girl stared at the clip in his hand, breathing too fast. "I cannot find my mom," she whispered. Noah glanced toward the stairwell, then back at the child. His badge reader was 2 levels above. His shift started in minutes. But the little girl was trembling in the cold garage, and every father knows there are clocks on the wall, and then there are clocks inside the heart. Noah set the yellow clip on the ground between them and said, "I am not going to rush you. I am going to wait right here until you feel safe." The girl in the yellow raincoat did not move toward Noah at first, and he did not ask her to. He stayed several feet away on the cold concrete floor, one knee bent, one hand resting open near the yellow butterfly clip so she could see he had nothing to hide. The parking garage hummed around them with fluorescent lights, distant engines, and water dripping from the ceiling pipes into little gray puddles. Every sound made the child flinch. Noah recognized that kind of fear. Mia had carried it after her mother died. Not loud fear, not dramatic fear, but the kind that makes a child watch every doorway as if the world might change again without warning. "What is your name?" Noah asked gently. The girl pressed her back against the concrete column. "Ava." Her voice was thin and shaky. "That is a pretty name," Noah said. "My daughter is Mia. She is 8. She thinks my pancakes look like potatoes." Ava blinked, confused enough to breathe a little slower. "Why?" "Because she is honest, and because my pancakes are terrible." A tiny sound almost became a laugh, but fear caught it before it could grow. Noah did not push. He looked toward the security camera in the corner, then toward the stairwell. He could have run upstairs and found someone faster. He could have left her for a guard to discover. He could have told himself the hotel had systems for this: badges, radios, protocols, expensive words printed in binders. But Ava was not a protocol. She was a child in a cold garage, missing one hair clip and trying not to cry too loudly. "Do you know where your grown-up went?" Noah asked. Ava shook her head. "Miss Dana was on the phone. I thought she was behind me. Then the elevator closed, and I got out on the wrong floor." Her breathing quickened again. "Mom is going to be mad. She says important people do not wait." Noah's face softened. There it was, the sentence that told him more about the child's loneliness than any report ever could. "Sometimes important people are wrong about waiting," he said. Ava looked at him. Really, when someone is scared, waiting can be the kindest thing in the world." He took off his work jacket and slid it slowly across the floor, stopping it halfway between them. "You do not have to wear it. It is just there if you are cold." Ava stared at the jacket for a long moment before reaching for it. She pulled it around her shoulders, the sleeves hanging past her hands. Noah smiled but did not laugh. Then he took out his phone and called the hotel security desk. The first call rang until it dropped. The second went to a busy line. The lobby above them was preparing for the inspection, and every department was chasing polish while a frightened child sat beneath their feet. Noah checked the time. 7:59. His shift was starting. He looked at his badge, then at Ava. The choice was not dramatic to him. It was simple. "I am going to stay right here," he said. Then we will walk together when you are ready. Ava swallowed. You will not leave? Noah shook his head. No, even if I take too long. Especially then. A minute passed. Then another. Slowly, Ava reached for the butterfly clip. Her fingers were still trembling, so Noah did not touch her hair. He only said, "You can hold it for now." At 8:06, she stood. At 8:10, Noah walked beside her toward the security office, keeping enough distance for trust and close enough for safety. At 8:14, a guard finally confirmed her name. Ava Sterling, daughter of Claire Sterling. Noah's stomach tightened, but his voice stayed calm. He handed the guard his written note, the time, the location, and the missing clip. Only when Ava was seated in a warm office with a glass of water did Noah turn toward the employee's stairs and run. By then, the clock had already judged him. But the little girl had not. Noah left the security office only after Ava had stopped trembling, only after the guard had written down her name, only after a woman from guest services brought her a paper cup of water and promised to stay beside her until her mother came. The girl looked smaller without fear, holding her upright, wrapped in Noah's damp work jacket, the yellow butterfly clip resting in both hands like something rescued from a storm. "Are you leaving now?" she asked. Noah glanced at the clock above the security monitors. 8:14. His stomach sank, but his voice stayed gentle. "I have to go upstairs for work." Ava's eyes widened. "Will you get in trouble?" He smiled, the kind of smile fathers learn to give when the answer is yes, but a child does not need to carry it. "I will explain." She studied him carefully, as if she already knew adults did not always listen to explanations. "My mom listens to reports," she said. "Not always, people." Noah felt the sadness in that sentence, but he did not speak against a mother to her child. That was not his way. "Then you tell her what happened when you are ready," he said. Truth has a way of finding the right room. He walked out before she could see the worry cross his face. The employee stairwell smelled like concrete dust and rainwater. His boots struck the steps in a quick rhythm as he climbed, one hand on the rail, the other holding the work jacket Ava had returned at the last second. At the top landing, his phone showed 3 missed calls from the maintenance office and 1 message from Martin Cole. "Report to lobby immediately. Inspection begins now." Noah wiped water from his forehead with his sleeve and moved faster. The service corridor behind the ballroom was already alive with controlled panic. Housekeepers rolled carts past him. A banquet captain whispered into a headset. Someone had spilled coffee near the west elevator, and a young attendant looked close to tears while trying to clean it before the inspection team arrived. Noah stopped for 3 seconds, took a towel from a supply shelf, and helped blot the edge so no guest would slip. 3 seconds. Not enough to matter to a clock. Enough to matter to a person. By the time he reached the time clock, it flashed 8:16. His badge did not scan on the first try because his hand was wet. It did not scan on the second because the plastic sleeve had cracked weeks earlier and payroll still had not replaced it. On the third try, the screen turned green. Late. The word appeared in plain black letters, cold and final, as if it understood everything and nothing. Noah breathed once, clipped the badge back to his belt, and headed for the main lobby. From the service doorway, he saw Martin before Martin saw him. The operations director stood near Claire Sterling with a tablet in hand, speaking softly, shaping the morning before Noah could enter it. Claire's jaw tightened as she listened. Her cream blazer caught the lobby light. Her eyes moved to the clock, then to the staff lined up for review. Martin leaned closer and said, "This is exactly what I warned you about. Personal issues. Pattern behavior. No accountability." Noah stepped forward, rain still dark on his shoulders, the small yellow butterfly clip now visible in his palm, because Ava had pressed it back into his hand and whispered, "So you can prove you found me." But proof can look like nothing when pride has already written the verdict. The marble floor shone beneath him. The managers turned. Martin's face arranged itself into disappointment. Claire looked at Noah not as a father who had stayed with a frightened child, but as an employee who had failed a schedule. And in that beautiful lobby, where everything had been polished except mercy, Noah Bennett understood the cost of staying. While Noah stood in the lobby with rain on his sleeves and the yellow butterfly clip in his hand, the story being told about him had already begun without him. Martin Cole stood close to Claire Sterling, his tablet angled like evidence, his voice lowered into the tone of a man who wanted cruelty to sound like concern. "This is the third delay in 2 months," he said. Different excuses, same problem. He is a decent man, perhaps, but decent does not mean dependable. Claire watched Noah from across the marble floor. She saw the wet boots, the mud, the uneven breathing, the maintenance badge scanned 17 minutes late. She saw what pressure had trained her to see. Inspection teams were arriving in 20 minutes. Board members were upstairs waiting for her report. Sterling Crest had built its reputation on precision, and precision did not forgive easily. Has he caused operational risk before? She asked. Martin did not hesitate. He questions procedures in front of junior staff. He makes people nervous about systems that are already approved. What Martin did not say was that Noah had found a broken child check-in process 3 weeks earlier. What he did not say was that Noah had filed a quiet written warning about the east elevator access near the family lounge. What he did not say was that fixing those things would make Martin look careless on the very morning the board wanted perfection. Instead, he opened a folder and showed Claire attendance marks, stripped of context, clean enough to convict a man who had never been invited to explain. Claire's face tightened. Today of all days, she said. Martin gave a small nod. Exactly. Above them, the chandelier lights burned warm and expensive. A family rolled suitcases past the front desk. A bellman smiled at guests while pretending not to hear. Noah remained still, because quiet dignity had become his only protection in rooms where louder men owned the narrative. He thought of Ava in the security office, wrapped in his jacket. He thought of the way she had said, "My mom listens to reports, not always people." Now he understood how true that sentence was. Claire stepped forward, and the manager straightened. "Mr. Bennett," she said, "on an inspection morning, lateness affects every department." Noah nodded. "Yes, ma'am. And when an employee refuses to meet basic expectations, leadership has to act." Martin's mouth barely moved, but satisfaction passed over his face like a shadow. Noah opened his hand. The yellow clip rested against his palm, bright and fragile. "Miss Sterling, there was a child in the lower garage." Claire blinked once. "What child?" Martin spoke before Noah could continue. "Security handles misplaced guests. Maintenance employees do not abandon their posts to involve themselves in situations outside their role." Noah turned his eyes to him. She was alone. "You should have called it in and reported to work," Martin said. "I did call. Twice. Then you should have escalated properly." The words came fast now, official and polished, each one building a wall around the truth. Claire looked from Martin to Noah, and old habits chose control again. "Enough," she said. "We cannot run a hotel on personal judgment." Noah's voice stayed low. Sometimes personal judgment is the only thing standing between a child and being forgotten. The lobby stilled, but only for a breath. Then the elevator chimed. The doors opened. Ava Sterling stepped out with a security guard hurrying behind her, her yellow raincoat still damp at the hem, her hair loose on one side. She saw Noah first. Not her mother. Not Martin. Not the polished managers. Noah. She ran across the marble and grabbed his hand, pressing her small fingers around the butterfly clip. "He did not abandon anything," she said, turning toward Claire with tears still shining on her cheeks. "He stayed with me." Claire's lips parted, but no sound came. Ava moved closer to Noah, as if the whole lobby had become too large again. "He did not pull me. He did not yell. He waited until I could breathe." Martin's tablet lowered by half an inch. The managers looked at one another. Ava looked up at her mother and spoke the sentence that made the chandelier-lit lobby fall completely silent. "He was late because he waited for me." Claire Sterling had heard thousands of reports in her career, quarterly reports, safety reports, revenue reports, guest satisfaction reports, all written in clean language by adults who knew how to make failure sound manageable. But she had never heard a report like the one her 7-year-old daughter gave in the middle of the Sterling Crest lobby, with one hand wrapped around Noah Bennett's wet sleeve and the other holding the yellow butterfly clip as if it were the last piece of proof in the world. "He stayed with me," Ava said again, quieter now, because every face in the room was staring. Claire moved toward her daughter, slowly, as if sudden movement might break the fragile truth that had just entered the room. "Ava, where was Dana?" Ava looked down. "On the phone." Martin Cole cleared his throat. "Miss Sterling, perhaps we should move this conversation somewhere private. The inspection team will arrive any minute." Claire did not look at him. "Where was my daughter?" Martin's face remained composed, but his fingers tightened around the tablet. Security located her. The situation was handled. Noah finally spoke, his voice low and even. She was on the lower parking level, near the east stairwell. A murmur passed through the managers. The east stairwell was supposed to stay monitored during family events, especially on inspection mornings, especially when children were moving through the hotel with staff. Claire's eyes sharpened. Why was I not told? Martin answered too quickly. Because there was no need to alarm you before we had complete information. Ava stepped closer to Noah. You told him? She asked. Noah crouched slightly, careful to keep his voice gentle. I told the guard what happened. Claire looked toward the security guard who had followed Ava from the elevator. The young man shifted uncomfortably. Ma'am, Mr. Bennett did bring her in. He gave us the time, location, and the clip. I sent the incident note up the chain at 8:12. Claire turned to Martin. The lobby seemed to tighten around that number. 8:12. 5 minutes before Noah arrived upstairs. 5 minutes before she fired him. Martin lifted his chin. I had not reviewed the details yet. But you knew there was an incident involving my daughter. I knew security had located her. And you let me believe he was late because he was careless. Martin's silence was polished, but it was still silence. Noah did not smile. He did not look victorious. He looked tired, and somehow that hurt Claire more. A man who had just been publicly humiliated did not reach for revenge when truth arrived. He simply stood there, rain drying on his shirt, dignity still intact, as if he had learned long ago that character does not need an audience to remain character. Claire's gaze dropped to the yellow clip in Ava's hand. She remembered fastening it that morning without really looking, one eye on an email, one hand on a coffee cup, already late for a call, already treating motherhood like another calendar item she had to manage efficiently. Her throat tightened. I want the footage, she said. Martin's answer came wrapped in hesitation. The system may be delayed because of the inspection load. The security guard looked up. No, ma'am. It is available. The second silence was colder than the first. Claire turned toward the elevator, her daughter beside Noah, the staff watching, Martin suddenly still. Then we are all going to security, she said. Right now. Ava reached for her mother's hand, then paused and looked back at Noah. Can he come too? Claire looked at the man she had judged by a clock and dismissed before hearing his heart. For the first time that morning, her voice lost its steel. Yes, she said. He should have been heard first. The security room at Sterling Crest was small, colder than the lobby, and filled with the quiet blue glow of monitor screens. Every camera angle in the hotel lived on those walls, elevators sliding open, hallways shining under warm lights, guests crossing the main entrance with umbrellas, employees moving with rehearsed urgency. But on the center screen, the lower parking level looked different. It looked lonely. Gray concrete. Fluorescent light. A yellow raincoat near the east stairwell. Claire stood behind the security chair with Ava pressed against her side, one hand resting gently on her daughter's shoulder, as if she had just remembered how easily a child can slip out of reach. Noah stood near the door, still damp, still silent, his badge clipped to his belt though it no longer promised him anything. Martin stood beside the far wall with his tablet lowered, his expression careful in the way guilt often dresses itself as professionalism. The guard rewound the footage to 7:49. On the screen, Ava stepped out of the elevator alone, turning one way, then the other. The elevator doors closed behind her. She walked toward the stairwell, stopped, looked around, and slowly sank beside the concrete column. Claire's fingers tightened on Ava's shoulder. Where was Dana? She asked. The guard switched angles. The nanny appeared on another camera near the service elevator, phone pressed to her ear, walking away from the family lounge. No one spoke. Then Noah entered the frame from the employee ramp, moving quickly until he saw the yellow clip on the ground. He stopped. He looked toward the sound no camera could capture. He knelt several feet away from Ava, hands visible, waiting instead of rushing. The footage had no audio, yet everyone in the room understood the language of his body. Respect. Patience. Grace. He slid his jacket across the floor. Ava reached for it. He tried calling security. Once. Twice. The guard checked the log. Both calls came in during the switchboard overload, he said quietly. They did not route through. Martin shifted. Claire did not look at him yet. She kept watching as Noah stayed with Ava minute after minute while the lobby above prepared for perfection. At 8:10, Ava stood. Noah walked beside her, close enough to protect, far enough not to frighten. At 8:14, he delivered her to security. At 8:12, the incident notice had already been forwarded to Martin's tablet. The guard pulled up the timestamp. Claire turned then, slowly. You knew? Martin swallowed. I knew security had eyes on her. You knew my daughter had been alone in the lower garage. I was trying to avoid panic during inspection preparation. No, Claire said, her voice quiet enough to make the room colder. You were trying to avoid responsibility. Martin opened his mouth, but there was no sentence clean enough to hide behind. Noah finally looked at the screen, not at Martin, not at Claire, but at the small image of Ava sitting beside that concrete column. Children should not have to prove adults failed them, he said. The words settled over the room like a prayer and a judgment at the same time. Claire closed her eyes for one brief second. When she opened them, the chief executive officer was still there, but the mother had finally stepped in front of her. She looked at Noah, and the shame in her face was honest. Mr. Bennett, she said, I judged you by a clock when I should have judged you by your character. Ava slipped her hand into Noah's, then into her mother's, joining them without understanding how much healing a small hand could begin. The monitors kept glowing. The hotel kept moving outside the door. But inside that small security room, the truth had done what power refused to do. It made everyone quiet. Claire Sterling returned to the lobby with Noah on one side and Ava on the other. And the marble room that had judged him less than an hour earlier seemed to recognize him before the people did. The inspection folders still waited on the table. The silver coffee urns still gleamed. The managers still stood in uneasy clusters, pretending not to watch while watching every step. Martin Cole followed behind them, no longer leading the story, no longer shaping the report, no longer protected by the clean language of procedure. His tablet looked heavier in his hand than it had before. Claire stopped in the exact place where she had fired Noah. The same chandelier light fell across her cream blazer. The same polished floor reflected Noah's damp boots. The same employees who had lowered their eyes now lifted them, because truth had returned to the scene of the mistake. Claire looked at Ava first, then at Noah, then at the staff. Her voice was steady, but something in it had changed. It no longer sounded like a command meant to end discussion. It sounded like a woman choosing to stand inside her own error. Earlier this morning, I made a decision in front of all of you, she said. I made it quickly. I made it publicly. And I made it wrongly. No one moved. Even the guests near the front desk had gone quiet. Noah stood with his hands at his sides, not proud, not bitter, only still. Ava stayed close to him, her yellow butterfly clip now fastened back in her hair by Claire's own trembling fingers. Claire turned toward Noah. Mr. Bennett, I judged a father by the clock when I should have judged him by his character. You were not late because you were careless. You were late because you stayed with my daughter when she was scared. A soft murmur passed through the room and faded just as quickly. Claire faced the managers again. That is not a failure of discipline. That is the kind of responsibility this hotel should have recognized immediately. Martin stepped forward. Claire, I think we should handle personnel matters privately. She looked at him, and this time there was no confusion left in her eyes. Your access is suspended pending an independent review of the child safety report, the incident timeline, and the information you withheld from me. Martin's mouth opened, but the room had already moved beyond him. The young supervisor who had pitted Noah earlier finally stood straighter. The security guard at the elevator lowered his gaze, ashamed but relieved. Claire looked back at Noah. Your position is restored, effective immediately, with full pay for the morning and a formal apology in your file. Noah breathed out slowly. I appreciate that. And I would like you to lead a new family safety protocol for every Sterling Crest property. That surprised him more than the apology. He looked toward Ava, then toward the lobby where families checked in every day trusting strangers to protect what mattered most. Miss Sterling, he said quietly, I do not need a title to do the right thing. I know, Claire answered. That is why you should have the authority to make sure others do it too. Noah was silent for a moment. Rain tapped softly against the tall front windows. The smell of coffee had gone lukewarm. Somewhere behind the desk, a phone rang twice and stopped. Then it cannot be for appearances, he said. It has to change the system. Real check-in rules. Working call routing. Staff trained to wait with children, not move them like problems. Claire nodded. Done. Ava looked up at Noah. Does that mean other kids will not be alone? Noah's expression softened. That is the idea. Claire heard the answer and felt the weight of it settle deeper than any board report ever had. She had spent years teaching people that excellence meant speed, polish, and control. But a single dad with wet sleeves had just taught her that excellence without mercy is only performance. The lobby stayed quiet as Noah bent slightly and handed Ava the yellow clip one last time. "Keep this safe," he said. Ava smiled through tired eyes. "You kept me safe first." And in that shining hotel lobby, the man who had been fired for being late became the one person everyone finally understood had arrived exactly when he was needed. 1 month later, the Sterling Crest lobby looked different, not because the marble had changed or the chandeliers had dimmed, but because the people inside it had learned to see what they used to overlook. Near the grand staircase, a soft blue ribbon stretched between two brass stands, and behind it stood a new sign that read Family Safety Welcome Program. Noah Bennett stood beside it in a clean navy maintenance jacket with a small silver badge that said Family Safety Lead, though he still carried himself like the same man who checked loose handles, fixed flickering lights, and noticed when a child's voice was missing from a room. Mia stood proudly at his side in a yellow dress she had chosen because Ava said yellow felt brave. Ava stood beside her in a matching ribbon bow, the butterfly clip shining in her hair under the warm lobby lights. The two girls had become friends in the simple way children do, without contracts, without apologies written by lawyers, without asking whether the adults deserved the grace they were willing to give. Claire Sterling watched them from a few feet away, her cream blazer replaced by a softer blue one, her phone tucked away for once. She had spent the past month listening more than speaking. She had walked the parking levels with Noah, reviewed every child check-in procedure, sat with front desk staff, apologized to the security team, and called Mia by name every time she visited. Excellence, she had learned, was not how perfectly a place looked when inspectors arrived. Excellence was whether the smallest, quietest person in the building could be safe without needing to beg to be noticed. Martin Cole was gone pending the final review, but no one never mentioned him unless policy required it. He did not build the new program around blame. He built it around waiting, checking, listening, and staying. When the small ceremony began, Claire stepped forward and faced the employees gathered across the lobby. "This program exists because one person chose a frightened child over a clock," she said. "And because that person reminded us that safety is not a department. It is a promise." She looked at Noah. He lowered his eyes, not from embarrassment, but from the kind of humility that refuses to turn goodness into performance. Then Claire handed the ribbon scissors to Ava and Mia together. "Ready?" Mia whispered. Ava nodded. They cut the ribbon, crooked but complete, and the lobby filled with gentle applause. Then Ava asked if she could say something. Claire knelt beside her. "Of course." Ava stepped closer to the small microphone, suddenly shy in front of all those grown-ups. She looked at Noah first, then at her mother. "A hero is not someone who runs fast," she said. "A hero is someone who stays." The applause did not come right away. For a few seconds, the whole lobby remained still. Guests at the front desk stopped signing forms. Managers lowered their clipboards. Claire pressed a hand lightly to her heart. Noah looked at Mia, and Mia smiled up at him as if she had always known this truth and had only been waiting for the world to catch up. When the applause finally rose, Noah did not stand taller. He simply placed one hand on Mia's shoulder and one hand gently over his silver badge, where the hotel had finally written down what his daughter already knew. He was not important because a title said so. He was not worthy because a chief executive officer apologized. He was worthy before anyone saw it. In the garage, in the rain, in the quiet choice to stay beside a scared child when the clock was counting against him. Claire looked at him across the warm gold light of the lobby, and this time she did not see an employee who had been late. She saw a father who understood responsibility better than any policy manual she had ever approved. And in the silence after Ava's words, Sterling Crest became more than a beautiful hotel. It became a place where dignity had been tested, grace had answered, and a good man's quiet kindness had changed the rules for every child who would walk through those doors.